Hello, everyone. This is Shivangi Shaw from Symbiosis Institute of Business Management, Hyderabad, and we are back with another podcast at Grow Junction. Today, we have with us Mr. Havish Madhvapaty, the founder of Havish M Consulting. He has been awarded as the Indian Achievers Award for Young Entrepreneur, 40 Under 40 Innovations, and many more achievements. Mr. Havish consults organizations on enterprise level and functional data analytics requirement, focusing on spreadsheet modeling and automation using VBA, Power Query, JavaScript, as well as data visualization on Power BI and Tableau. He also teaches analytics courses at premium B schools like IIMs and IITs, etc. Moreover, he has also been invited by Economics Times Masterclass, Monster.com, and Inside IIM to conduct workshops on analytics. We welcome you, sir. Sir,
Thank you
how are
for
you?
inviting me.
Yes, sir. So, how are you, sir? How is the COVID situation treating you?
Really think too much about it. Sure, we have all had to pivot and reorient and rethink the way we run business, but yeah, doing well.
All the MBA aspirants and other viewers would want to know this one question, that what was it that drew your attention or your initial interest in the field of analytics? Basically, your journey in this field till now. If you can throw some light.
Yeah, I would love to throw a lot of light on it. First things first, I think as an MBA, you have to understand there is no one question, right? So while it's very fancy to ask mentors and senior people from the corporate, what is that one advice you would give us, or what are the top three things that you would tell us? The truth is that there is no silver bullet, right? There is no easy way. And while it's all very nice and fun to ask questions like this, the fact is that I can't really share that one thing with you, but I will definitely share a number of different things with everyone. My journey has been quite odd, right? So I'm from the 2007-9 batch of MBA. And back then things were very different, right? So we did not even have a term like data scientist, let alone wanting to do something like it. We did not even have a fundamental understanding of what a data scientist is. That term wasn't even invented. So a lot has changed in the last 12 years. I started with Reckitt Benckiser, that was a campus placement. I worked in sales and marketing for a couple of years, but my heart was always in teaching, and I knew I had to teach. So I left that job at Reckitt. I struggled for a little bit trying to get a teaching job, did a lot of research work, and then ended up working with Amity University as an assistant professor. And you have to keep in mind, I was only 26 when I started, right? And especially people who start that early in education, we end up essentially spending our life there. Right? So I loved what I did. That was my first passion. It still is. I still love to teach, but that was the first time in my life I loved Monday mornings. I would wait for a Monday to come so that I can go and do what I do. Had a wonderful 2 years there. But then the truth of the matter is that I was still very young. I was 28. I had 2 years of education teaching experience, but I knew I had a lot more to do in the corporate. So I started picking up some freelance projects in marketing research. And that one thing led to another. Then I left Amity University. I worked with some research startups as the head of research. And over the next 3-4 years, we did some very good work. We were also listed as one of India's most promising market research firms. And then eventually I started Havish M Consulting, which is a proprietorship firm. So I'm an independent consultant. A lot of students who look at this journey feel that, oh, you were not quite sure what you wanted to do, and you ended up in analytics after a lot of zigzag. That is entirely correct. I mean, in my heart, I was always a numbers guy. And I have been working on Excel for 2 decades now. My love journey with Excel started as a school student way back in 2002. And I mean, this is my 21st year working on Excel. And throughout this entire period, I have enjoyed it. I have lived in, I breathe it, and I still continue to work on it. So yes, I did a lot of different things, but I sort of knew in my heart that I will end up in analytics, right? And I'm not an engineering student. So I'm a commerce student with an MBA in marketing. So for me to pick up data analytics and data science was quite odd, because I had to teach myself programming from square one, and I had to start learning coding at the age of 27. That's never easy. So I understand the journey that a lot of students have to go through, where they say that we don't really come from that background. So is it too late for us, or is it the right call for us? And the only thing I tell them is, look at me. I mean, it's too late to start. And of course, there's a lot of catching up that you have to do. So if you come from a computer science engineering background, of course you have a head start. But then that doesn't really mean that you can't start a little late and catch up to the others. So that's how I would put it.
That's amazing, sir. That's really very inspiring. So, sir, moving forward, like your profile is like all of us know it's amazing. So, do you have any mission or vision in your life? Like, how did you manage to achieve and fulfill your goals in your career?
Right. One of the reasons I ended up becoming an entrepreneur and did not want to do a corporate job is because mission and vision, these were not really terms that I associated with. If I associated with those terms, I would have stuck with a 9-to-5 job. But on a more serious note, see, a lot of things that have happened accidentally, and that is the journey of a lot of entrepreneurs, where we have to make 9 mistakes before landing up with that one thing that works, right? Fortunately for me, I don't have to do a lot of stuff which failed. We were always profitable in all the ventures that we did, but I had to ride a lot of bad luck. One of my proprietors with whom I was working in a firm as the head of research. So this guy and I could not get along well after 3 years, so we had to disband. I started a private limited company. So I became the director of a company. We were profitable in the first year of business, but again, the 3 directors had to disband. We hear stories about incurring a loss or having to take a loan and having to struggle and work 120 hours a week. I haven't really faced those typical challenges, but I have faced challenges in my own way, where I have put in a lot of effort and somehow I have not really managed to find the right people around me. And the interesting bit is that today, I've completed 3 years with Havish M Consulting. If you had asked me as recent as 4 years back, that would you ever consider doing something of your own independently? I just dismissed it. I never had the confidence or the interest to be a business owner, to handle administration, finance, pay GST, follow up with clients for payments. I was always a numbers guy. I was in research, I was in analytics. I'm somebody who loves working in front of an Excel file or on Power BI, right? I'm not really somebody who likes to handle the other aspects of business. But then, I accidentally started my own firm because I was at a point in life where I had no other choice, and I realized that the only way I can do the things that I love to do and do it the way I like to do it is if I do it independently, right? Today, after 3 years, if you ask me, it's very different. I can't think of doing anything different. And I think that's what a lot of you have to realize, especially students, those of you who are on the fence about being entrepreneurs. It is not a straight road, right? And you don't know what you don't know. So no matter how many people you invite for podcasts and mentors you have, fact of the matter is that your journey is going to be your journey, right? And nobody can predict it. You can't plan it. It will happen as it is supposed to happen. But you have to realize that it takes a lot of gumption. It takes a lot of courage. And you have to make a lot of sacrifices as well on a personal front. So yeah, today what I do, I absolutely love. But then how I ended up doing what I'm doing today is quite an interesting story, right? For another day.
That's amazing, sir. Like everyone should do what they actually love to do. And you said it quite correctly. We cannot predict or plan anything. So moving forward, every MBA student's doubt is regarding the specialization. So like people who are an aspiring MBA or who are studying MBA, they would want to know like which specialization they should go for. So can you give a starter's guide to the field of analytics for an MBA student or any aspirant who wants to venture into this field?
So I'm going to a 2-part question. I'm going to talk about choosing a specialization in absence of analytics. And I'm also going to talk about the specializations that make more sense with analytics, right?
Yes.
See, when it comes to the choice of specializations, you have to understand either you know exactly what you want to do. For example, students know they want to be in finance, right? Or they know they want to be in marketing. Or you can do whatever you feel at that moment is the right decision. Let me explain that. So if you know you want to be an MBA finance, then you're never going to have regrets, right? You know exactly this is what you like to do. On the other hand, if you don't really have a particular area of interest, then it doesn't matter, right? Because then it's just um, a line that you have picked and you will continue moving on that line as far as your career path is concerned. Then you cannot have regrets, because if you don't really have any preferences, then why do you have to think about choosing one and rejecting the other one? At that moment in your journey, if you feel around you, you have the right batchmates and you have the right support system, and your institute is offering you the right support as far as the specialization is concerned, go ahead and pick it. I mean, I did my internship with Coca-Cola and I did my internship in HR, right? And by the time my internship got over, I realized I don't want to do HR, and I mean, there was an entire discussion. Okay, discussion is probably a very, small word that I'm taking. There was an entire conversation and argument that happened with my corporate team, because what the placement team said was, why did you do an internship in HR if you wanted to end up taking marketing and finance? But after doing that HR stint, even though I liked what I did, I knew I don't want to do it, right? And that was a big call, right? Because throughout my first year, I felt I want to take up HR. Even today, there are a lot of times where I feel probably I did the wrong thing by not taking that. So life is like that. You'll never have a very clear answer that, okay, this is perfect for me or this is not perfect for me. Pick one and run with it. Unless you have a very strong reason for not picking something, I don't really feel it makes a very big difference, because see, more and more areas are becoming interdisciplinary now, right? I mean, look at something like techno-commercial, techno-finance. Now you have finance guys who are doing coding, you have HR analytics. So you have MBA analytics who are hired by the HR functions of a company. These things weren't there earlier, right? Silos were there. Now those silos are slowly getting broken down. And what is enabling more integration between different functions is technology. It is data, right? Earlier, data used to be a barrier, which means that if I'm in HR, people would laugh if I say that I suddenly want to move into marketing. But think about it. Why does it really matter today? Because as long as you have the basic fundamental understanding of how data works, right? And how processes are created, you can easily shift from one to the other, isn't it? I mean, look at me. I handle work for FPA a lot, which is financial planning and analysis. I do a lot of work on HR and analytics. So performance management, compensation benefit, reward recognition. I also teach investment banking firms financial modeling. What does that tell you? It tells you that I am tool agnostic and I'm function agnostic. If today I have to do a training on Excel, I can very well do a training on Power BI tomorrow. If a client tells me that, can you teach our team fundamentals of R, even if I don't know how to work on it, I can pick it up quickly. As long as you have the fundamental traits of being a data analyst, the tool doesn't really matter, because the knowledge is transferable. If you learn one tool, learning the other one becomes easier. I mean, I'm not sure if you're going to ask this question later, but if you learn Power BI, learning Tableau is easier, because everybody says, should we learn both or should we only learn one? So the answer to that question is, it doesn't matter where you start, because the knowledge is transferable. But coming back to the point of specialization, I have a very simple opinion on it. It's not too big a decision, right? If you already know what you want to do, then you don't need me to tell you. And if you are indifferent towards specializations, everything has equal opportunities, and pick one and stick with it. Don't have regrets on it. As far as the analytics specialization is concerned, I'm also not very sure how to answer that, because it depends on institute to institute, right? Certain institutes give you exposure to certain workshops and certain trainings, or you might have an institute very otherwise, but you don't really get a lot of exposure as far as analytics is concerned, which is where you have to put in more effort from your side. Out of college hours, you have to pursue a course or do a certification, or you have to gain learning via YouTube. I think the question should not be about what specialization to take. The question is, do you want to work in analytics or not, right? And the problem is that because there is so much hype around data, all students feel that if we come up and say we don't really like working with data, people are going to judge us. And I don't really see why, because if you speak to a student and the student says that I don't like marketing research, would you judge him or her? Of course not. If somebody says, do you like working on the stock market? An MBA student might say, this is not really my cup of tea. I don't like working in this area. Similarly, building a career in data is not something for everyone, right? I love working in front of, like I said, an Excel file for 20 hours. I'm the happiest guy on earth. If you tell me people don't like that concept, they say we want the client interface and we want to work on different tools and things like that. So that's my point. Decide if data is really something you want to get into or not, right? But here is where it gets confusing, because data is not a choice, because everybody has to work with data. Just like no B school student can say that, you know what, I don't like working on PowerPoint slides. I choose not to work on it. You can't choose not to work on it, right? You have to work on it, because that is the bread and butter. That is a key life skill. It's not a functional skill. Wherever you are at any level, right from a fresher to a senior executive, you have to create slides, right? Similarly, business communication. In the same breath, I will also put data consume and data handling, because if you have to consume data, you need to know at least the basic fundamentals, right? So have that distinction. Do you need to learn the tools because you feel it's a line on your resume and you want to be a little more technically qualified, or do you really want to pursue a career in it? If you have a career in it, then your specialization has almost nothing to do with it, right? Because what you will be learning as far as data analytics is concerned is almost nothing to do with your specialization. So the tools that you learn, the level at which you learn Excel and you learn, let's say, Power BI and you learn Tableau, mostly these will not be a part of your college curriculum unless you are in a hardcore MBA analytics program, right? Fine, you might do a few sessions and workshops here and there, but that is not sufficient, right? You have to invest a lot more time in it. So I think that is something you really need to ask yourself. Is a career in data really something you want to do? If not, the basic things that you need to learn. And I have a very simple answer to that. Advanced Excel, intermediate level Power BI, and basic Python. I think these three are the top three things that everybody should be comfortable with. Everything else is great, but secondary to it. R is not important that much unless you are in a company or a profile where they really work on hardcore data science, right? Python is the more, I think no student can have an excuse not to learn it. Everybody has to learn it, right? Since this is a conversation and not a demonstration, I can't really show you, but you have to understand that Excel is not the same tool it was a few years back. Excel today has an entire integrated development environment. I can run Python on Excel. I can run JavaScript on Excel. I can run TypeScript on Excel. What that tells you is that as basic and as pervasive a tool like Excel also requires coding today. So after 5 years, when you see that even if you are working as a financial modeler, you have to learn coding, right? There is no way around it. Because if you don't learn coding, no matter how good your business skills and your subject knowledge is, there is a ceiling and you can never cross that ceiling. Because what somebody can do with programming, you will never be able to match that. That is where that line of distinction is there. So yeah, I hope that helps. I think it's not really that difficult a question to answer. I think start learning the tools, and when you start to learn advanced Excel, things like Power Query, Power Pivot, TypeScript, that is when you will realize, is this something you can see yourself doing for the rest of your life or not?
Thank you, sir. That was really an in-depth explanation of everything. So, sir, moving forward, as you'd already mentioned, the tools. And so I would want to ask what kinds of courses and certifications one can do apart from what they're doing in college right now. So what are the prerequisites that will help build a strong profile of an aspirant, of an analytical aspirant?
So I wrote an article on this on Medium. I would suggest that everybody should check it out, where I talked about how to finish online courses. Now, the problem is that in B schools, you are very competitive. We have to be, right? Because, I mean, while we do work as a group of students where we collectively like to share our knowledge and we move each other forward, at the end of the day, we are competing for the same slot, for the same internship, for the same placement, right? And we always feel that completion is important, perfection is important. It isn't. I have been watching courses on LinkedIn Learning. I took a subscription for LinkedIn Learning about a year and a half back. I must have started at least 250 courses. Now, let us say that on an average, each course is about 3 hours. Do you really feel that I've done 750 hours of courses on LinkedIn? Of course not. Now, what I've done is I like to break down my learning into different buckets. So I would say that there is one course which I need to be doing really well. So like the course that I finished earlier today was on Adobe Premiere Pro, because I do a lot of content creation, so I have to learn how to do video editing. So there was a 38-minute course on LinkedIn Learning, and I must have spent at least 4 hours watching it, practicing it, and rewatching it. What does that mean? It means that this course was integral to my work. Hence, I realized that simply one run through is not enough. I have to watch it a few times. I have to make sure that the tough parts skipping, right? Which happens with a lot of us, right? We tend to skip the tough lectures thinking we will come back to it later, and we never do. Similarly, there are many courses that I would start, which I will probably only watch 10% or 20%. And that confuses a lot of students, and they say, but how can you not watch the entire thing? And I tell them I can't afford to watch it because if I'm investing 5 hours in it, that is an opportunity cost, right? I'm investing 5 hours into this, which could have been spent on something else. So let us say I do a course on blockchain. That is not really an area in which I work or I expect to work in the next few years. So I only need to have a very high level overview of blockchain. What that means is that I can afford to watch a course, setting the speed to 2x, and maybe taking the liberty of fast forwarding a little bit, right? Now, the question here is, how do you decide what is important and what is not important? Unfortunately, there is no easy answer to that. There are many times that I watch a course a little quickly, and then I feel that, I think I missed out on some learnings and I have to come back and rewatch it, right? But since I've been doing online courses for 8-9 years now, I think I'm undertaking the journey of a new course. And I do a lot of courses, right? I do about 500 courses a year. I am able to tell myself that, I think this course, I have to spend a lot more time on it without multitasking and getting diverted. And maybe on a different course, I can do it a little quickly. Sometimes I like to do courses parallelly, so you would find me doing one course on Solver and one on financial modeling and one on HR analytics, which is exactly what I'm doing right now because I'm building courses on all these three things. Now, a lot of you might say, but is that not complicated? You're learning HR analytics and Solver, and you're also doing financial modeling at the same time. Now, it works for me. It works for me, A, because I'm able to divert my attention. It happens to everyone. You work on one thing for too long, and after a while, diminishing returns happen, right? Every new hour that you're spending, you are trying to invest your complete attention into it, but there's a point at which diminishing returns start. I expect to keep the same pace up. So for me, it's nice because the moment I feel that there's a little bit of fatigue coming in, I switch over to a different course, and that keeps things fresh. That's one. Second, I have felt that the ability to interrelate courses is fantastic. For example, in a lot of my trainings, when I'm teaching people how to work on Power BI, what I do is I quickly open Excel and Tableau and Python, and I tell them, let me quickly show you how to do the same example on the other tools. Now, one way to look at it is that it's a waste of time. When we are talking about Power BI, why am I digressing and moving into other tools, right? But think about the practicality. We have invested 40 minutes learning something on Power BI, let us say doing a k-means, right? So once I've learned how to do that clustering on Power BI, does it not make sense to transfer at least 70-80% of that common knowledge and see how to do the same thing on Tableau, Excel, and Python as well, right? That's something that I do all the time. And this is not just when I'm doing courses. This is also for my, when I teach to my clientele and to B schools, I like to do this. And even when I'm learning, many times you would see that I do something on Power BI. And the moment I am able to write the formula successfully, I try to replicate the same thing on a different tool. That way I'm able to ensure that my learning is transferred, number one, and also I'm able to validate my learning. They always say that the best way to know whether you have understood a topic is to teach it to someone. Let's say you do a quick 15-minute course on, let us say, linear regression. Let's take a very simple topic. Now, in your mind, you might feel that I've understood it perfectly. I know what is sum of squares, and I know what is the lattice square method and what is residuals. But the moment you teach it to 5 other people, and they are going to ask you questions, that checks whether your fundamentals are clear or not. Because it's always about short-term memory. The moment you do a course, it's all very fresh in your mind, right? The terms and the formulas and the process. But when you teach it to somebody, you realize that you can't teach unless and until you are very, very sure about what you're teaching. So this is one advice I give to all the B school students. Very few follow it, but as a mentor and as a faculty and as a coach, my duty is to be like a broken record. I will say this 1,000 times if required, hoping that students will listen to it. Please create YouTube videos. It doesn't matter what the content is. It doesn't matter if other people are already doing it. It doesn't matter if you feel it is not going to earn you any benefit. You have to do it, because the process of creating a YouTube video teaches you a lot of different things. Number one, it helps you articulate your thoughts. So right now, if you have learned a lot of scattered bits of knowledge from here and there, it forces you, to take a A4 sheet of paper and list down everything. That's one. Second, it improves your communication, because only when you start to teach and when you record yourself in front of a camera, you realize how many gaps are there in your understanding. When you start to explain, let us say, what linear regression is, you start to realize that there are so many small gaps in your understanding, and that forces you to fill up those gaps. Number three, it enables you to improve your presentation. So the way you set up your slides, the way you set up the flow, how you have an introduction, how you have that center, which is the meat, and how you have a closure to your presentation. Plus, you get the opportunity of working on different tools, So you work on the design aspect. You work on the marketing aspect, where you have to promote your work to other people. And since I've been doing YouTube videos for a while, I have been through this journey myself. And I think every YouTuber has been through this video, where we start off not knowing how to speak and what should be the rate of speech and what should be the kind of content. And we question ourselves, why are we even doing it? When there are other people who have already done 100 times more content than us. But you have to realize that there is a market for you, because you might be able to create an impact on somebody who's more comfortable watching your video versus my video. My video might be more your video might make more sense. Plus, as a B school student, I think the best thing, which is a takeaway, is that it's a portfolio you're creating. Everybody says, I want a live project with me. And I give about 200, 250 live projects in a year. But everybody who comes to me, they will say, we want to do a live project. And I tell them, where's your portfolio? And they say, what do you want to see? I said, don't ask me what I want to see. Show me what you want to show me. And look at the analogy. If I am giving, obviously not for live projects, but if I'm giving a presentation to a new prospective client, right? What do you think I'm going to do in that first meeting? Do you think I'm just going to come up, empty-handed to that meeting and ask the client, what do you want? And I'm sure I can do it for you. Of course not. I'm going to prepare like 7 different examples, right? I'm going to prepare different scenarios. I'm going to present to the client that, see, this is the research I have done on your industry. This is what I feel I can contribute to you, so that they understand where I'm coming from, right? I don't come to a meeting empty-handed and say, tell me what you want and I am confident for you. Similarly, when you are applying to a live project, you cannot come empty-handed. You have to create 3-4 visualization, dashboard, maybe an Excel model, maybe a PowerPoint slide, and say that this is what we have created and this is what we would like to work on. A lot of students don't like it, but I always tell them, don't come to me and ask me to give you a project. You create your own projects. Why should I give you a project? You come to me and say that, there is an area we really like to work on. Let's take an example. Let us say you want to do something on customer analytics. So you want to an Excel model on RFM, on recency, frequency, and monetary analysis. But don't just come to me and say, I would like to work on RFM. Do that 5 hours of research, read 50 articles, pick out the best from each of those articles, prepare a skeleton, a table of content, an executive summary, and then say that this is what we plan to do, right? How that helps me is that rather than having to tell you the basics, where to go and get that first bit of information, I can point you in the right direction. I say focus a little less on this and focus a little more on that. Help me help you. I was pursuing my PhD for 4 years before I dropped out to start my business. And my guide always used to tell me this, that I would just come into a room and tell her, that we had discussed this last time and, what is your feedback? And, she would just say, hold on. You know your work very well, right? Because it's your thesis that you're working on. But I'm handling 15 scholars. If you just suddenly come into a room after a week and you expect me to remember what we had discussed, it's not my job, number one. Number two, I'm not the best qualified to remember your project because it's your baby, right? It's your project. Similarly, when students just suddenly come on a call and they say that, we would like to show you this, I tell them, why did you not send this earlier? See, whenever you have a conversation with anybody from the corporate, please give them a heads up. A conversation, a meeting, a live project discussion, an endeavor to get a live project or an internship should not be a mystery. If you ask somebody, can you come on a 15-minute call? You don't come on the call and tell them what you're going to talk about, because then it's a mystery, right? You don't know what the conversation is going to be about. And clients, the first thing you do is you send them an email saying what we intend to discuss, in bold capital letters. You say what we intend to discuss, how much time do you expect to spend on that meeting, and what is it that you expect from the client? So these 3 things I will always have: the amount of time that I'm spending, what we expect to discuss, and what I want from them. Why are these 3 things important? A, it tells them that I need 30 minutes, right? If the client tells me, Havish, I only have 15 minutes, you know what I tell them? I tell them, let's not do the call. Because you can't force me to suddenly magically compress it into 15 minutes, what otherwise would have taken me 30 minutes. So I tell them, you know what? I don't want to have this meeting. Let's postpone or reschedule it to a different date, number 1. Number 2, I give them the agenda so that they know exactly what we're going to talk about and the expectation setting is correct. Otherwise, what happens is there are rude surprises, Suddenly we finish our presentation and the person might say, oh, that's it. There was nothing else. And you're like, but what else did you want? To avoid these sort of ugly surprises, if you tell them that this is exactly what we plan to discuss, the expectation setting is correct. The person knows this is what is going to be discussed, no more and no less. The third thing is tell them what you want from them. So typically in a meeting, I will tell the client that please tell me what is your top 3 pain points. Now see, if you suddenly come for a meeting and ask the client, what are your challenges? How do they know, it's not top of their mind. They might have to call up 5 other people. They might have to do some thinking on their part. They might have to go through a few of their files. It is too late, right, in the meeting to ask for these things. So you have to give time to the person, right? So you have to give them a week and you have to say, you know what, for the meeting that happens next Friday, I would like you to think about the top 3 challenges and pain points that you have so that you're able to bring it up in the meeting. Now, this is a leap of faith because a lot of clients might find it a little odd that, I'm pitching for work, I'm the vendor here, right? And I'm telling them to do homework. But you know what, as you move up the ladder, you realize that people appreciate it because at the end of the day, being nice and doing icebreakers and it doesn't matter, right? All these things are only a momentary thing. At the end of the day, it's a genuine relationship that you're building with the client. And especially if you're in data analytics, you have to understand that you build something over a period of time, right? And it's about building a genuine relationship, being concerned about the client problem, right? Not just doing customer satisfaction, but doing customer delight. I think that is what everybody's efforts should be towards.
Thank you, sir. That was a very in-depth explanation, and we should actually build relationships first in order to actually venture into data analytics. So, moving forward, what kinds of job exist in the field of analytics? This is what our MBA aspirants or our audience would like to know.
Yeah. So first things first, I cannot tell you what will happen 2, 3 years from now,
Yes.
because I fail to understand how can anybody predict it. If you had asked me in 2018, right, or in 2019, how would the world look in 2021 or in 2022? I would not have known, right? Looking at the sort of changes that are happening to Excel and Power BI, if I talk about two tools that I, do most of my work on, we had no idea what all is going to happen in the span of 36 months, right? I mean, we have gone from 1 to 10, right? That has been the qualitative shift in these tools. And in the same, how will Excel look like in 2025? I have no clue. And I feel even Microsoft doesn't have a clue, because it's evolving so rapidly and so organically that it's not that they have a calendar prepared for the next 10 years, that every 2 years we are going to come up with these incremental improvements. No, these are massive qualitative improvements that are happening, right? So in terms of jobs, the point here is that I can't tell you what will happen and what type of jobs will open up in the next couple of years, because the type of jobs that you have today, Power BI analyst, there are people who exclusively work in data visualization. These jobs weren't there as recent as 3 or 4 years back, So as the technology is advancing, as programming is becoming a part of almost every tool that you have around you, including PowerPoint, Excel, Power BI, you will start to realize that jobs will also evolve and new jobs will come up, right? What I can answer is the fact that you have to learn fundamental coding. Remember, I'm not saying this because I come from, an educational background of programming. I say it because I work with industries, right? I have been working with certain clients for the last 4, 5 years, and I've seen the change that has happened. I've seen how they used to work on Excel using formulas and functions and pivot tables and lookup. And today we are talking about how to do a GitHub integration and how to write TypeScript. So that conversation has completely flipped over, right? And this change will continue to happen because automation is going to impact us in many other ways. As RPA, as robotic process automation takes over, we will see that the way we focus most of our attention on a project is going to fundamentally change. I'll give you an example. Pivot tables have been around on Excel for over 2 decades now. And almost everybody knows how to work on pivot. It's one of the best features on Excel, right? Which is a summarized format of your data. And that is how we have been trained, and we teach clients how to work with it. But in the last 2 years, Microsoft has released something called Analyze Data, which is a engine, which essentially means that you can select any data set in Excel. You can go to Home, Analyze Data, and it will just tell you who the top 5 customers are, or which are the best business segments, which products are not growing, what is the correlation between sales and profit. And this is just at a very nascent stage right now. My mind boggles to think what will happen in the next 1 or 2 years, right? As we continue to advance. So the point is that when you are learning, please prepare not for today, please prepare for what the world will look like 2, 3 years from now. So for example, if students say, let me go to Naukri or to Monster and just do a recce and see what type of job profiles and designations are there, don't go too much by that, because that changes so rapidly, right? But yes, when we talk about fundamentals, you can't go wrong with that, right? The fundamentals of any MBA, the technical knowledge, which is advanced Excel, basic Python, and Power BI, you can't really go wrong with that. I think that is what you have to focus on. Don't focus on the jobs, because like I said, the designation means nothing. Also, the profile will keep on evolving rapidly, right? I mean, I know of people, there's a friend of mine who's an engineer, and he did his MBA from IIT, and he was working in finance, right? I mean, he's a computer science engineer, but then he ended up doing an MBA in finance. He started with a finance role, and now he's in digital, so now he's doing automation. It's almost nothing to do with finance, because it's a cross between legal, finance, and chain role, SCM. And it's so crazy. I mean, nobody would have thought that a role like this would even occur, would even emerge, right? Because these things just weren't there. And the only enabler has been technology. Technology has made a lot of these new roles, come out of nowhere magically, which is very exciting, but it's also very confusing because people say, but how do we prepare for something which is not even there? Especially for the first years, you have a good year and a half to go before placements happen, and maybe another 6 months before you actually start working. How are you going to prepare for something which isn't even there? Focus on the fundamentals. You can't go wrong with fundamentals. Excel, Power BI, Python, and for that matter, even other languages are not going to disappear overnight. If you invest in learning JavaScript, if you invest in learning HTML and CSS, you can't go wrong with that, right? Even as technology will mature and we have things like Power Automate and Power Apps, coding is always going to be a part of it, right? And please realize that it's a lifetime of learning. To connect doing an MBA with, not a specialization in analytics, but a focus on analytics, you have to be a lifelong learner. And, it all sounds very exciting to say that, you have to continuously learn and develop your skills. It's also quite different, An analytics career is very different to a career in HR, marketing, research, advertising, supply chain, because in other areas, once you learn, that is it. Your learning is over. Your education, at least, is over. The only thing you have to focus on is to improve your relationships and understand business better, right? Analytics is very different because unlike HR, once you learn the fundamentals of HR, you don't have to learn new HR theories and performance systems every day, right? But in analytics, things are going to develop literally daily. And that is quite different to other profiles, because if you're in analytics, then you constantly need to study and study and study. While other areas as well will require you to update your skills, analytics is something where you really have to learn new skills, like, as a dog, you have to learn new skills because Power BI wasn't even there in 2015. I mean, just look at the gravity of that statement. We talk about Power BI being used by 97% of Fortune 500 companies, and it's almost as pervasive as Excel today. In another 2 years, Power BI is going to become almost as important as Excel. In 2015, it did not even exist, right? In a very short span of 6 years, it has become the number one in the market. So if you look at that in continuation, imagine what will happen in the next 6 years. We don't know. Maybe in the next 6 years, technology will advance to a point where the role of a data analyst or anybody else in the corporate will just be to ask questions to a system. We are already at a place where I can go to Excel, like I said, and say, who are my top 5 customers in India in the consumer segment last month? And it gives me a result. This is a place we are already at. Imagine how much we'll develop going forward, right? So it's exciting, but it's also challenging. And from a data analytics perspective, please don't go by the profile and the designation. Focus on learning the tools, right? And absorbing like a sponge a lot of information, because more and more tools keep on getting developed, more and more frameworks keep on getting developed. And there is no one website or top 3 blogs that you can go to or 5 people to follow. It's not that simple. If you look at my catalog and my bookmarks on Google Chrome, you will see that I have to follow like 150 different links, right? Every single day, because it's so varied and there's just so much happening, right? There is no one defining authority, where you go to one website and that website tells you there is this has everything that you need to know. Before I question, I also want to give you, something I had heard in a podcast. Brian Jones has been with Microsoft for over 20 years. He's the head of Excel. He's literally the guy who runs Excel for Microsoft. Brian Jones was on a podcast, which I was listening to a couple of months back. And I remember there was a question asked to him that, how much of Excel do you know? And he said very little, that just goes to show you the humility. That just goes to show you that the more you learn, the more you realize that you know nothing, right? It is such a long journey. I mean, I've been working with Excel for so long. And today, if you ask me, how much of Excel do you know? Because I realize the top guys in the world and the crazy, amazing stuff that they're creating every day, I know there are still miles to go before I sleep, right? So I think that humility is very important, that finishing a 5-hour course is great to get a feel for that topic, but your journey and your baby step just starts there. It's hours and hours of learning after that, that will make you excel at any particular tool.
Correctly said, sir. Humility is very important. Also, sir, analytics, it's actually quite dynamic and we should stay up to date, correctly said. So, moving forward, so actually, when we were talking about shifting from one specialization to other, so I myself am doing, like I've done my undergrad in finance and then I've done my MCom in marketing. And now again, I'm doing MBA. So like if I want to shift into analytics, like if I want to pursue that, what factors should I consider before going to it? Like apart from learning the tools, apart from the fundamental things, what else should I consider if I want to shift from one specialization to other? Yes.
Right. So Shivangi, first thing is that you mentioned your educational qualification. I was not even paying attention to that. And you know why? Because it doesn't matter.
Yes.
The only reason I brought up the point that I am a commerce student with an MBA in marketing is because I wanted to get that point across to all the listeners that it doesn't matter. I've been working with clients and, I'll tell you something on a lighter note. I've been working with certain clients, very large energy and power companies. And, after 3 years, I don't know what happened. Somebody happened to have a look at my LinkedIn profile and they said, "You're not an engineer." I said, "I'm not." They said, "We assume that you're an engineer. We assume that you're a computer science engineer. How can you do all this that you do without coming from a CSE background?" The point I'm trying to get across is that this happens with me all the time. People, even despite me telling them, sometimes refuse to believe that I do not come from an engineering background, right? Because of the work that I do today. But the serious point here is that it does not matter. When you say that how shift, that is not really the correct way to put it, because you're not shifting from anything to anything. Try to understand. You have certain strengths. The fact that you have done your education in the area that you mentioned means that you have certain strengths compared to somebody who comes from a different background, correct? Similarly, somebody else who has done a mechanical engineering might also bring certain other strengths to the table. But at the end of the day, the proof is in what you know, right? And the end goal is to know how much you know. Nobody cares about the journey, right? What people care about is what you know and what you don't know. And see, with analytics, the thing is, it's very binary. It's very objective. If I ask you 5 questions in an interview, I ask you, tell me the difference between a fact table and a dimension table. What is a cardinality versus a relationship? What is column from examples in Power Query? What is AutoML? Now, see, you either know the answer or you don't know the answer. There's very little subjectivity to it, right? Unlike being in marketing or research or trade marketing, consumer behavior, where you have to bring your own opinion. Data analytics is science, right? It's not about opinions, it's about facts, which is also what makes it very unique, because you either know or do not know the answer. Sure, communication is important in certain profiles because you have to present it to the client at the end of the day. So you have effectively how storyboarding works, how to create a blueprint, how to create a wireframe. Of course, you need to know these things, but the bulk of work that you need to bring to the table is your analytical capability. So that's the answer to the question, that there is no shift that is happening. And your preface, when you are speaking to somebody that this is what I've done in my education qualification, it has absolutely no role to play. Whether you are a computer science engineer who today is doing no coding, or you're somebody who has done a zoology honors and is today becoming a data scientist, I hope you understand where I'm headed with this. So that's what I would say, that how do you start? I mean, I think, like I said, the 3 tools, Excel, Power BI, Python, are the most important. And also remember that learnings are transferable, right? There's a lot of commonality. So once you learn fundamentals of how to, let us say, build an if statement, how to build a conditional statement, of course, the knowledge can be translated into Power Query, into DAX, into programming as well, right? Of course, each language and each tool will have its own peculiarities as well, but the core will remain the same. And I think it doesn't matter where you start, as long as you're moving in the right direction. one thing I always tell everyone is never underestimate the value of a 5-minute video. You know what I mean by that is a lot of us don't start watching a 3-hour video on YouTube thinking that, oh my God, I will never be able to complete it, or that it is going to take me so much time to complete it. But what you don't realize is that the moment you break it down, right, into 30 sittings of 10 minutes each, you realize that you can easily take 4-5 sittings a day, right? So if you're doing 4-5 sittings a day, you're spending about 50 minutes, 6 days, you're done. And then people say, but this is doable, I think I can do it. And while it might sound very common sense, common sense sometimes is lacking, right? And that's what you have to realize. Never underestimate the importance of bite-sized learning. That because that bite-sized learning starts to add up. Rather than learning one day in 15 days where you sit for 4 hours, don't do that. Focus on spending 30 minutes every day. And that's all I expect of students who I meet. I tell them that if you are motivated even a little bit, today after the call or after the conversation, whatever it is, please go and watch a 30-minute video on a topic that you have been wanting to do, that you know is important, but you have never got around to doing it, giving yourself all sorts of excuses. I've been a student myself, right? So I understand when I put myself in that pair of shoes. A lot of students don't start Python saying that we don't know where to start. That's the most common answer. The second is that how will we learn everything? These are crazy, these are just stupid, comments to give. It doesn't matter where you start, as long as you start. Because the moment you start and you feel that you have watched the wrong video, you will hold yourself accountable. So the next time when you watch a video, you will audit it. You will make sure that you're watching the right content, because your time is valuable. Also, like I said, as long as you're learning, there are always takeaways. There are a lot of times when I do a course and I'm only able to extract 5% from it. And while a lot of people might judge and say, really, was that really a good return on investment? I say yes. I don't care if I learned 70% or 100% or 10%, because even if I've learned 10% from it, I have moved forward. Like we say, somebody who's running is faster than the person who's walking. Somebody who's walking is still faster than the person who's sitting on a couch. It's just that simple, right? It does not matter what is your pace. What matters is the continuity, right? Is the habit that you are forming. And that is what will happen with a lot of guys. Students who come from smaller colleges mostly are more driven because they realize that their communication skills are lacking. Their educational college, the degree does not have that pedigree of top 100, 150 B schools. So they force themselves to work harder because they know they have to compensate for those things that they lack in. And they end up doing very well. And I think that is also a trend that I've seen in a lot of places. I mean, if you look at EY, right? EY now has globally said that we do not need a college degree for you to apply for a job. That's it. No strings attached. You don't need a college degree. And this is going to happen even more going forward. People are not really going to look at 12 plus 3 plus 2 or 12 plus 3 plus 3 to judge how good you are, right? Those barriers are going to get broken down. And sure, we have been hearing this for many years, but we have already seen that happening everywhere, right? So I think that is what you should focus on. Focus on the learning, focus on bite-sized learning. And remember that every minute counts, The first video that I watched on Python in 2019, I still remember, was by a person called Mosh Hemdani. He runs a YouTube channel. It was a 6-hour video, right? And when I started, I had already wasted 2 years not knowing where to start. And, sort of convincing myself that I'm going to start with the perfect course. And I never found the perfect course, right? So one day I finally decided enough is enough. I'm going to start watching it. Did that course tell me everything I needed to know? Absolutely not. Was that 6-hour video the best video in the world? Of course not. Because now I'm smarter. Now I know there is better content in other places. But that video was wonderful because it opened me up on that journey, right? And once I started that journey, then there was no looking back. I read this somewhere. I don't remember if it was a quote by somebody or if I read it in a book. It said that motivation never happens before you start something. A lot of people say we are not motivated to start learning coding. And I tell them you will never be motivated unless and until you start it. It is only after you spend 1 hour on it and you see that, okay, I can also do it, and you feel that you have achieved something tangible. When you write your first line of code, that feeling of gratification where you feel that I have done it, I have written print hello world and this has appeared on my screen. That is what will push you to do the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. But if you don't even download the software and you say that I'm not motivated to start it, I mean, ignorance is bliss, right? I mean, you will not even know what all you're missing out on. So I think that is what everybody has to realize, that even when you are experienced, even after you have 10, 20, 30 years of experience in the corporate, there is always that resistance. There is that hesitation to start something new. When you grow higher up the ladder, that resistance is even more, because you already have a comfortable life. You have your perks, you have your monthly earning, and you're not really motivated to start something new. And that is where you really have to push yourself to start it. Because once you start it, then you have committed to yourself to finish it, right? And I think, again, like I said, it's simple. Take away from it what you want to take away from it. But this is something that you really have to sit down and think about. Why is it that you haven't started that course, which you have been planning to do for the last 1 year, right? And today is as good a day as any other day. Do not start on Sunday. Do not start on that next Monday. Do not start after your midterms are over. Today, if you can't spend an hour, spend 30 minutes. If you can't spend 30 minutes, spend 5 minutes. But start that journey. You will thank me later.
So that was quite a motivation. So we'll wrap it up by the last question. So any golden advice you would want to give our audience?
Yeah, so like I said in the beginning, there is no one question, there is no golden advice, there is no silver bullet. You can use all the colors that you want. I think I've already shared quite a lot of inputs in the course of the conversation. But the only thing I'll say once again is that analytics is tough. It's interesting, it's peculiar. Don't jump into it just because you feel that there is a push, and the entire industry seems to be driving towards it. No, it's a skill. You have to learn it. You can't escape it. But should you pursue it as a career path, you really have to sit and think really, really hard about that. That's one thing. Second is, I always tell people, please create a YouTube channel and create content. Stop telling yourself what good will come out of it. I can guarantee you will benefit from it directly and indirectly. The third point is, surround yourself by people smarter than you. I mean, if you walk into a room and the people around you are not smarter than you, you're doing yourself an injustice. Get out of that comfort area, because you have to be hyper competitive, right? You have to look at people around you and say, why do I not know that? What is stopping me from learning that thing? Never be afraid of asking questions. That's number 4. Please learn from everyone around you, and proactively. Don't wait for the opportunity where somebody, is working on machine learning and you say, okay, can you tell me something about it? Go and seek help. Go and ask questions. Go to that person who is an expert in what they do and tell them, you know what, I can do a barter with you. Everybody, what the world used to run on, right? Barter is a wonderful way, because never talk about what you can absorb and learn from others. It's an exchange, right? What can you do for them and what can they learn from you? What I do with my interns is that one intern is working on machine learning, one is working on JavaScript, another one is working on financial modeling. I force all of them to come into a common meeting. And they all say, why should I come into a meeting where machine learning or financial modeling or visualization or something else is being discussed? And I tell them that is exactly the point. Something that you like to do. If you're in MBA finance, of course you're going to learn finance, but you will probably never get around the possibility of learning other things. So you have to pick yourself up and put yourself in a different room and force yourself to learn other things. That interdisciplinary learning is very important. So I think that's key. So learn coding. I think I mentioned that a number of times. And again, don't look too much into it. You don't have to be an expert coder, but you have to understand coding. You don't have to write code, but you at least have to understand what code is and how it is written, right? I think that is a essential life skill for every B school student.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. It was a really insightful session, and I hope our audience must have learned a lot from it. So thank you once again, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.